It's been a beacon of stability for more than a decade, but Senegal has seen days of unrest and violence. It was sparked by the arrest of a popular opposition leader. So how will the government contain this growing anger? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Peter Dobbie. Senegal is one of the most stable and democratic countries in West Africa, but days of violent protests in the capital, Dakar, are causing concern about a possible escalation. At least 10 people have been killed in what's been described as the worst unrest in nearly a decade. The anger began after the detention of a prominent opposition leader on rape charges. It soon spread to broader grievances, including high unemployment and government corruption. Ousmane Sonko has denied the rape accusation and says the charge is politically motivated. The opposition leader is widely seen as President Macky Sall's main challenger in the 2024 elections. He was released on bail on Monday and called on his supporters to continue peaceful protests. Well, we'll hear from Ousmane Sonko in a moment. First, President Macky Sall addressed the nation on Monday. Here's some of what he had to say.
We have to show our differences in a way other than destructive violence, because whatever our political choices, we are a single family and none of us can have a separate destiny from that of the Senegalese nation. Our individual and collective work orders us to work together, consolidating the fundamentals and not destroying them. Nothing is more important than the preservation of keeping the soul of the Senegalese nation.
This mobilization must be maintained. It must even be much larger. But it must above all be peaceful. It must be peaceful. Today the people have regained the right that Macky Sall confiscated 9 years ago at the demonstration. The people have taken it back by force. We must not lose this right.
So, who is Ousmane Sonko? Well, formally, he's a tax inspector who founded his own political party in 2014. He rose to prominence after releasing documents he said exposed political corruption in Macky Sall's governing alliance. Sonko has drawn support from young voters and finished third in the 2019 presidential election with a little more than 15%. And he's criticised Senegal's relationship with its former colonial ruler France, and he's hinted he wants to examine the tax benefits given to foreign companies. Al Jazeera's Nicholas Haque has been following this story all week. He has us this update from Dakar.
Despite calls for calm and unity by President Macky Sall, the movement for the protection of democracy, a coalition of actors from civil rights groups, civil society activists and the opposition are calling for more protests. And it seems that 1 week after Ousmane Sonko was detained, those demonstrations are spiraling out of control beyond the capital, Dakar, in several cities throughout the country. Many young, disenfranchised people taking to the streets, looting specifically French supermarkets and gas stations because they accuse President Macky Sall of protecting big business interests and big corporations, playing in the hands of France, a former colonial power, instead of protecting the young and the poor. President Macky Sall says he's heard this call. He's appealing to try to resolve those deep grievances. He says those are due to the coronavirus pandemic and the fallout, the economic fallout of the coronavirus pandemic. He's actually called for debt relief in order to tackle the economic crisis. Meanwhile, Ousmane Sonko says this is the beginning of a movement of what he calls a revolution ahead of the presidential election of 2024. But we suspect more protests to come in the days to come. Nicholas Haque, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
OK, let's get going. Let's bring in our guests today. Joining us all from the Senegalese capital, Dakar, we have Aminata Toure, formerly a Prime Minister of Senegal, Yassine Fall, an economist and founding member of the Movement for the Defence of Democracy, and Ousmane Diallo, Francophone West Africa researcher at Amnesty International. A warm welcome to you all. Yassine Fall, from the opposition's stance, this country, Senegal, used to be the high watermark of stable democracy in West Africa. What changed and why?
Well, What changed is the fact that we are really at a crossroads. We are at the crossroads because we have right now a president who is trying to set the stage to have a third presidency. This is for the elections are in 2024, but the president has repeatedly said that he will reduce opposition to its minimum level of existence. The president has had also a practice of regularly, and this is the third time, undermining its major opponent, using the courts to the point where that opponent is not able to run for elections. The third thing is we have seen a situation of really, political harassment of civil society, of activists, and of political leaders. We have also seen a high reduction of liberties because before, we were allowed to, demonstrate peacefully in the streets. This president was able to be elected because there was a big social movement against Abdoulaye Wade, and that social movement was given the enabling conditions to demonstrate, to really, even almost invade the parliament when Abdoulaye Wade was trying to vote himself into a third term.
Okay, Aminata Toure, Yassine Fall, just let me put those points to Aminata Toure, the former Prime Minister. Ms Toure, as a journal of record, what Yassine Fall is saying there is factually correct. The three significant opposition leaders who have stood against the incumbent recently have all been, in effect, airbrushed out of the process by a use by somebody or some people of the legal system.
Well, let me just maybe speak to the situation right now, and my greeting also to Yassine, who's an activist and a great woman rights defender and rights defender. I do think that the situation as we speak, is concerning, that for sure, if we see what happened. Senegal, as you said, is known as, a great example in Africa of stable democracy. So how did we get here? So I think it's a very important question. Obviously, and I have said that when I was in governmental position, the issue of third term is way behind us. This is something that we don't expect anybody to discuss about. For me, it is very, very clear. I said it several times, and the president himself said it in the past. So I expect that in 2024, we will have an election without the current president. That's my hope. But what happened is that for a year, a COVID impacted year, the economy of the country, took a terrible hit. And as you know, we do have an economy that is 80% informal. And that's where usually young people, get some earnings, being in shops, in small tradings. And for a year of curfew, of course, they got terribly impacted.
Okay.
Some of them tried to join Europe. 500 people died. So this added to the frustration of not being sure about the democratic future, that for sure.
OK, we will return to COVID, I'm sure, in the next 30 minutes or so. Ousmane Diallo, from a human rights point of view, Amnesty is saying it is troubled by what's going on in Senegal. That's an understatement, surely, because it's not just happening in Dakar, it is happening in other locations as well.
It is happening nationwide indeed. And as of today, we have seen that 12 people lost their lives in the context of the protest since last Wednesday when the opposition leader Ousmane Sonko was arrested. But this is not the only the human rights violations that we have documented. We have documented also attacks against press freedom, such as the suspension for 72 hours of 2 TV stations that were commenting live the protest on Wednesday and Thursday, and also disruptions to internet access and to social messaging apps on Friday. That was documented by internet activists such as NetBlocks Consortium. So those are all very concerning in Senegal, especially in the current context, when, as rightly pointed out by my two co-panelists, the question of the third term candidacy that has been alleged to be a project by the incumbent president has been hovering over the scene in the political arena. And rightfully, we are calling for the government to launch investigations into the circumstances in which 12 people lost their lives. We have seen that many of them lost their lives when security forces used lethal force while policing the protest, which is also very concerning. And we are calling naturally all parties to restraint in the current context of COVID-19. But as said by the former minister Aminata Toure, I think the COVID-19 has taken a very big hit on the informal sector. And this is the protests are not only due to the arrest of the opposition leader, but there has been a lingering underlying discussion in Senegal about the impact of the COVID-19, about the necessity of some of the measures that were taken by the government to contain the COVID-19 impact.
Okay, just let me go, Ousmane, just let me go to Yassine Fall for the opposition again. Mr. Sonko has a reputation of being able to galvanise the young. Given that the president is showing no sign of backing down, is it wise of him to carry on trying to do that, particularly seeing as how the elections are, in theory, a relatively long way away, 2024?
Well, right now, I think that Mr. Sonko, we have presented a platform of our, what we are demanding the government to do. We are, I mean, yes, it is, of course, I think that the COVID-19 is one of the factors. But before the COVID-19, there was a very high level of increased poverty in Senegal, increased economic discrimination, and increased marginalization of the poor. This is a fact. Because we have seen, floods in the summer, huge floods in the summer. The president himself took a long time, as usually, several days and weeks before he went to visit families who have lost everything. And we saw also that hundreds of young people who have been, who died in the ocean or in the desert, trying to get out to look for another, possible El Dorado. But also the government, the president was silent on that. He didn't even give, 1 day for the death to really recognize that and pay respect. So I think there has been a series of factors that have been increased violation of economic and social rights, being access to water, being the land grabbing that has involved rich people, that have also involved people, related to the government. But also, I think that what we hear young people saying is that young people are placing a lot of hope in the political agenda and the economic proposals that Mr. Sonko is proposing to them. No one can deny that. No one can just say that this is simply about poverty, because we have had several situations in Senegal where we have seen really increased poverty, increased social marginalization.
Understood. Ousmane Diallo, you've already touched on this point, Ousmane. It's not just about COVID-19, really, is it? It's also about the COVID curfew that they put in place, telling people they had to be off the streets by 9 p.m. It's about the tax breaks to French companies like Total and Auchan. It's about tax breaks to the Chinese. The Chinese government is in a hole to Senegal worth $1.6 billion, and yet people are still living in poverty. So the economy is doing well on the one hand, but people aren't seeing the benefits of that on the other hand.
Yes, that is exactly the point, because many of the urbanized population in Senegal do not see the benefits of the economic growth of the last few years. Yesterday, one of the protesters gave a very eloquent and insightful speech about his reasons to protest. He said basically that he is a graduate of the university, but the promises of social mobility that existed some decades ago in Senegal, when people went through the education system and got higher university diplomas, do not exist anymore. And so what he basically said is that after I got my high school degree, I tried to get into a training school, but I did not have any means in order to pay my fees. And that's why I'm demonstrating. And I think that discourse is very relevant it rings a bell in many quarters in Senegal. We see many people that sees the economic growth and the growing disparity between the have and the have-nots in Senegal, and the fact that they have a master's degree, bachelor degrees in a very important academic disciplines, but they cannot have jobs that could give them a decent living standard in Senegal. And that is a very concerning issue. And I think yesterday the president, in his speech, in which he said that he was going to edit the timing of the curfew, which will not start anymore at 9 p.m., but at midnight and at 5 p.m. But a lot of emphasis on the social programs that he enacted over the past few years, such as the Fonds Force COVID-19, which has been very much criticized for not reaching the right quarters in Senegal.
Okay, just let me move the conversation on, Ousmane Diallo. Let's go back to Yassine Fall. Mr. Sonko is undoubtedly a populist. His movement is populist, but he has to go beyond that, surely. He has to come up with policies. So what are his actual policies to get the country turned around economically?
I do not agree with this name of populist. I think Mr. Sonko has written 2 books. One of the books is called Solutions, in which he's laying out how really a progressive economic agenda can really develop Senegal, but also in the development that has growth, but distributive growth, that would enable really, a social infrastructure to be built, but that will enable a domestic private sector to thrive. That will also enable partnership with, countries and development agencies and international private sector that is really respective of the rights of the Senegalese, but they will put the interests of Senegalese citizens first. So I think he has written also another book about really natural resources, in particular all of the natural resources, oil and the rest, and how the natural resources in which Senegal is endowed could really help us put us in a path of really an emerging economy. So yes, maybe because you read English, but you could share with you, we have developed a program that is really thorough during the elections, that was budgeted for the first time. Here was a development program by a candidate that has completely explained how it's going to run. We're going to put the country back to its feet, but it also, not beyond that, put it, in a development path.
Okay, Aminata Toure, as far as Macky Sall is concerned, can he continue to underpin his existence as the incumbent by this idea that he may want to reheat the idea of going for a 3rd term? He went there in 2016, it wasn't received very well, and we don't have any guarantees that he won't try it again.
Well, let me tell you that I'm not speaking on his behalf to begin with. I said that my hope is he's not going to run. He doesn't have to run. He has to do his 3rd term and terminate this one in peace, and make sure that he take into consideration the demand from the youth, because I think that's the challenge that we are facing, and take sound economic policies that will generate jobs. Because one of the desperation of young people taking the sea or taking the streets is that they don't have jobs, even though some of them might be very educated. That's the bottom line. That's what he has to solve by making sure that he can support and promote national production. Senegal is still dependent in many ways, and that we have to make sure that we industrialize the country, that you can generate jobs, that you add value to natural resources, especially agriculture. I think these are, the challenges that he faced, and he has to find sound solution with good expertise, which is another challenge that he faces. And he has to make sure that in the coming days or the coming weeks that he comes with a team that is able to show a sound program that will address the needs of young people, not globally, not only in talks, but with concrete programs at the field level. You're going to ask me where he's going to find the money. I think he has to look into his budget and cut all the luxury and expenditures and reallocate them to programs that are sound and that are job-creating programs for young people. So it is time for him, for the 3 years left for him, to sort of give a clear answer to young people.
Okay.
But
just let me, as we head towards the end of the program, Aminata Toure, just let me go back to Ousmane Diallo. When it comes to people stepping back from where we are at the moment, there are voices in Dakar saying that the entire country is on the precipice of something much more dangerous than we've seen so far. Few voices are saying, let's take the temperature out of it. One of the voices is the Muslim Brotherhood, but nobody's listening yet. In the opinion of Amnesty, why is that?
So on this topic, I think this is beyond the mandate of Amnesty International. But just to give you a few points, I think you're absolutely right. The number of casualties, lethal casualties that we have seen over the past few days is almost equal to the number of casualties we have witnessed during the anti-third term protest of 2011 and 2012. So in a span of 5 days, we have seen as much casualties, as much people dying during the protest as people died between June 2011 and February 2012. And that has scared a lot of people. And we have seen a lot of mediations by civil society members, but also by members of the religious brotherhoods in Senegal, who have mediated between already before the arrest of Ousmane Sonko on Wednesday,
yes, but
also since then, since this weekend. And I think it is due to this pressure that both parties, as much as Ousmane Sonko as President Macky Sall, made public speech yesterday calling for restraint and announcing...
Ousmane, I'm going to pause you there, for which I apologise. The last 30 seconds of the programme to you, Yassine Fall, super briefly. The military are on the streets, as we are having this conversation, on the streets up to and around the presidential palace. Is that the reality? The president still thinks what we're seeing right now in real time may go either way?
Well, we are very concerned because we think that, Senegal should not be and cannot be ruled by armed forces, by forces. And the president is saying something in one way after last night, but by what we are seeing in terms of really bringing the armed force like we are at war, while young people are protesting for their right to live decent lives and have employment and decent employment, there is a big discrepancy. So we are concerned, and United Nations and ECOWAS have both warned the government to allow people to do demonstrations peacefully and to follow the rule of law.
OK, we have to wrap up our conversation on that thought-provoking point. Thank you to our guests. They were Aminata Toure, Ousmane Diallo and Yassine Fall. And thank you, too, for your company. You can see the show again via the website, aljazeera.com. And for more discussion, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation, of course, on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Peter Dobbie, and everyone on the team here in Doha, thanks for watching. I will see you very soon. For the moment, bye-bye.